Okay, so here we are in the middle of nowhere, out in the boonies in Sri Lanka, coming to you from, where are we anyway?
I won't tell them.
That's right. It's this undisclosed location. Wow. Master hideout. This place, even if we said where we are, you can't find it on the internet. It's really? Just not there. Yeah.
Good.
So we don't mind talking to you through the podcast, but we really don't want any visitors. And besides, we've been requested by the monks to keep this location confidential. So they don't want disturbances either. Anyway, this is Buddha Vangsa.
And Dhamma Vangsa.
The Vangsa brothers. And we're talking about existential ambiguity. The existential ambiguity being. We all have this view of being. I am. And this is mine.
But where is it?
Yeah, really. Can you show it to me? Where is this being? And if you point to your body, well, that's just a body.
Point to the car?
Maybe it's the car. Yeah, that must be it.
Or the local football team.
Yeah, something that you're identified with. And that's how we create this so-called being, by identifying with sense objects. You cannot conceive of being all by itself. Or maybe you can imagine it, but it's not real. There is no being apart from a world. That's why Heidegger always talked about being in the world. This existential being is always a relationship, a relation between the self and some object or objects in the world. And the collection of all the objects in the world is called my world. And each of us has a my world. And my world is made up of the objects with which I identify and in which I hold myself in relation.
The 5 clinging aggregates.
Yes, that's how Buddha expressed it. And the 5 clinging aggregates are, the part of the 5 clinging aggregates is the body, the mind, possessions, sense perceptions, mental experiences like ideas and designations and words and titles, and so many things that we normally consider to be I, myself.
They all show up in one of those 5 categories.
Yes.
One of those, did I say 5? 5 aggregates.
5 aggregates. Yeah, well, they are categories.
And if we cling to them, we suffer.
Well, we have to cling to them to exist, quote unquote, to be, quote unquote.
As a fabricated self.
As a fabricated self. Actually, there is no such thing as an I or a self. This is something that we make up. It's a disease. It's like Buddha compares it to a canker, which is a kind of a sore that develops in leprosy or something like that. Really nasty sore, oozing blood and all of this. Yuck. So the cankers develop from our clinging to these 5 aggregates, the things that make up the 5 aggregates, which again are the body, the senses, the mind, objects, and even terms and designations that we are attached to.
Things that show up in the 5 aggregates.
Yeah. So it's not really so important exactly what the 5 aggregates are. What's really important is that we cling to them. Whatever we cling to is part of the 5 aggregates.
Yeah.
Whatever we cling to is the baggage that we drag around with us everywhere, and that makes us miserable because guess what? It's going to change. Nothing is permanent in this world. And so the very things on which we base our identity and our being, quote unquote, and the reason being is in quotes is because it's not real being. It's fabricated being. It's phony being. So our being is based on these objects, and these objects are subject to change. And when they change, we feel death. We feel like our existence is threatened. We feel like our identity is threatened. Just think of any one of the many courtroom dramas that we've seen. When the witness's story is shown to be a deception, he starts to get agitated. He begins sweating. The temperature in the room hasn't changed, but he's about to be exposed. And similarly, our being is always exposed in, I call it the court of conscience. Deep within our heart, there's a place where the truth exists. And this is where conscience is the judge. And we're hauled before conscience by the bailiff of death. Time. And we're forced to hear the accusations against us, which are spoken in silence, the voice of silence. And we perceive the silence of conscience as accusatory.
Because we feel guilty.
We feel guilty because we have fabricated something. What we have fabricated is this being, I am. This is what we have fabricated, and it's always based on the appropriation of some object. Appropriation is a nice word for stealing. I take something and I make it mine.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a physical object. It can be a designation or something like that.
Yeah, but I declare it I or mine.
Yeah.
I project my being into it. And then I say, this is mine. Then from that point of view, I look back at myself and I say, that is I. The owner or enjoyer of this object is I. And that's how we define ourselves. This is all given in the Mulapariyaya Sutta, spoken by the Buddha more than 2,500 years ago. And in this one sutta, he gives everything required to heal the disease of I and mine. Something which psychology, psychiatry, even existentialism and ontology and all these things has been unable to do. But the healing process of the Buddha depends on a certain practice that only you can do, only the individual can do for himself.
Depends on you stopping bullshitting yourself and others.
That's putting it in a very direct language, yeah. And this is accomplished by insight. Insight literally means seeing in to something that you normally don't see.
The dynamics of how you create the self and how you experience the world.
Yeah, the root structure. The root structure of the experience, the subjective experience of every unenlightened person goes through 6 stages. And we have given the explanation of that in our video. And we're going through it here in the 4th chapter of Wetti Muni's book, Buddha's Teaching and the Ambiguity of Existence. This is a very important book because in it, Wetti Muni expresses the Buddha's teaching, and he actually builds a construct, an image of the Buddha's teaching, which is called the eye of the Dhamma, which simply means duplicating the structure of the Buddha's teaching in your own mind.
Yes.
So he has given us the privilege of witnessing in his book his own personal construction of the eye of the teaching of the Buddha.
And unlike many other authors, he doesn't simplify the teaching.
Right. That's what makes it valuable. There's so many books, Buddhism for dummies, Buddhism for hippies, Buddhism for yuppies.
Just be happy.
Yeah, right. Buddhism for idiots. But this is not Buddhism for idiots. This is Buddhism for people who really want to know what it is. Neo, do you want to know what it is? This is what it is.
This is what the trap looks like.
Once you see into the structure of the trap, then it dissolves all by itself. Because once you see what you're doing to yourself, you can't do it any longer. It's just like, oh my God, I'm doing that?
So instead of running on automatic, you start running on awareness.
Yes. You have to shift. Right now, the mind is out of control. It's going in all these different directions, pulling you and sucking your energy in all these different directions, attached to these different objects, feverishly, desperately trying to create an identity that will last.
You're wandering in the maze of your fabricated self, and you can only go down those paths that you're identified with. You never step outside of that trap.
Yeah, it's a rat race.
And you can't even see all the possibilities that are outside of your maze.
No, it's just like a maze because you can't see over the wall. You can't see what the next passageway is. You can't see where it goes and how to get out. So the Buddha is giving the top level view. He's saying there are these 6 stages of the root structure. And I'm not going to go over them in detail here because we already did that in previous episodes and in the video. So you have to see the video, the realization of no self, which is the first in the series of Eye of the Teaching, where we're going to go through each of these major themes in Weti Muni's book and give some visual clues, diagrams that you can use to understand what's going on.
But thinking about it won't help. You gotta check it out in your own experience in real time. In real time,
because you cannot change by thinking about stuff. Yeah. Thinking about means memory in the past or imagination in the future. And the past and future aren't here, aren't now. Only the present is here and now.
They're fabrications.
If you're going to change, if you're going to cure yourself of this mental disease of I and mine, it's going to happen here and now. There's no other place where it can happen, no other time when it can happen. So, okay, that's our intro. We say these things over and over and over again because it takes repetition sometimes to absorb a new idea. So let's continue where we left off in Weti Muni's book and try to finish this section. He says, briefly, being is the persistence of subjectivity or the persistence of subjective experience. And since the immediate experience is recognized to be that which I am, at this time I is identical to the immediate experience. The perception of pleasurableness in being, that is, in being I, is conceptually realized as the perception of pleasurableness in the immediate experience. Now, the immediate experience is direct sense experience, okay?
All 6 senses.
Yeah. Like seeing something, either with the eyes, or hearing it with the ears, or visualizing it in the mind. And thinking, Yes, this is I. This is myself. This is going to persist. Okay, I remember when I was, back before I started realizing all this stuff, I was looking for knowledge. And my criterion for knowledge, the value of a given particular piece of knowledge, was that it had more persistence. You know, like this week's pop song, number 1, is not very persistent because next week it's going to be something else.
Blatantly impermanent.
Right. But the laws of physics, the laws of logic, these things are persistent. They're not only persistent, they're pervasive. Everywhere you go, everything you look at follows these laws. So I was much more attracted to, for example, physics and mathematics than I was to, you know, pop music and fashion and all of these evanescent things. Use a $3.50 word. Evanescent means it evaporates. It evaporates in very short time. So people get pleasure from the persistence of those things with which they identify as self. And the pleasurableness of being is realized conceptually in the immediate experience of those things. So when I encounter something that I feel is stable, is permanent, and identify with that, then now I've got a real identity, you see. So this accounts for the attraction of knowledge. But what accounts for the attraction of identification with designations? Well, we think that we're identifying with something greater than myself, like a country, a political party, a religion, an idea, a great idea. Now, the problem with really, really great ideas is that most of them are simply abstractions. Because actually, and in fact, we human beings don't have much power to create stuff that's on a scale much bigger than we are. Okay? And when we do, it's usually in the form of an abstraction, like a group agreement amongst a number of people that, okay, we're going to think like this. We're going to call ourselves this. We're going to adopt this policy or this identity.
But it isn't a real thing, and everyone interprets it subjectively.
Well, yeah, that's the only way we can interpret things.
Yeah.
The thing where we delude ourselves is that we think these things have some objective validity. Countries, for example. We think that countries really exist when all they are is a line drawn on a map and a bunch of paperwork.
Or that capitalism or communism actually exists.
Yeah, it's just a theory. It's just a philosophy that somebody wrote in a book. And we may like that philosophy, you know, it may have different advantages.
Sounds
and
good
so
on paper.
Yeah, right. They all do. But what are we agreeing to? What are we identifying with? It's only an abstraction. It's only an idea. And sure, that idea may have apparently more persistence than an individual human being. These abstractions may appear to have more longevity, more permanence than an ordinary human life.
And so much more important than a human also.
They appear to be much bigger. Big ideas. Like everything.
Yeah, our idea is so important that we have to kill everyone to realize it. That's happened a lot of times.
Oh, it sure has. This idea is so great that it's worthwhile killing people over. Or even sacrificing our own lives over. Capitalism versus thisism or thatism. And it's all just an abstraction, people. Why are you getting all bent out of shape about it? For example, you'll never hear us say something like, we're Buddhists, or we believe in Buddhism, because we don't think there's any such thing.
No.
We think that, yes, there was a man called the Buddha, and he discovered something remarkable, and he had the decency to teach others what he had discovered. And this is one of, if not the most valuable thing that has ever been discovered. But it's just an idea. It's just a fabrication. And the Buddha admits that his Eightfold Path is a fabrication.
A fabrication to end all fabrications.
Well, yeah, that's the special character of it. It's a belief to end all beliefs. It's a path to end all paths.
But all those other Buddhist fabrications, all those strains of Buddhism, most of them don't have that element in it.
No, because they've turned it into a religion. So we're non-religious Buddhists. And we very much appreciate what the Buddha has done, the benefit that he has provided for everyone.
He didn't want to create a religion.
No. And he didn't create a religion in his lifetime.
No.
That was done by others later on.
He found out a solution to the problem of suffering.
Yeah. That's all. It's not bigger than that. It doesn't have to be bigger than that.
No.
If you can find a solution to your suffering, what else do you care about? Everything else becomes irrelevant. If there's a solution, if you're suffering from terminal cancer, and somebody comes up with a cure for that particular type of cancer, that's all you care about. You don't care about sending your kids to college. You'll mortgage your home. You'll sell everything you've got to get that cure. So similarly, if you understand truly what this teaching of the Buddha is, then nothing else really matters, because everything else we're doing is an attempt to solve the problem of suffering on some scale or other.
Yeah.
But the Buddha's solution is the cure for all suffering forever. Period.
Never mind that it has a million side effects that are very beneficial. The main thing is the problem of suffering.
That's right. Of course, the side effects are going to be beneficial. Simply sitting down and meditating 15 minutes a day has been shown to change people's survival rate of heart disease and brain waves and all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah.
Improves their concentration, their memory, makes them feel better about themselves, etc., etc. But those aren't really what it's about.
No.
Those are just side benefits. The real benefit is getting rid of suffering, dukkha. Now, where does suffering come from? Precisely what we're talking about here. The identification of
Impermanent objects.
Impermanent objects as I, as self. Or the creation of a false subjectivity. There's real subjectivity, the awareness of the individual, and then there's false subjectivity, the existence of I and mine. And all these things have to be gotten rid of in order to conquer suffering. So, the pursuit of pleasure, what is that in the U.S. Declaration of Independence? Liberty and the pursuit of pleasure, or something like that. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's it.
Material happiness.
Yeah. These were very smart men. They knew that if people felt free to pursue all the happiness that they could consume, that would keep them out of trouble.
And they would generate a lot of resources for the elites to
basically
right. Take over the world.
That's right. The capitalists would win. And that's what they wanted.
They aren't really capitalists, but they that's what they call themselves.
They use capitalism as their particular style of controlling the population. Anyway, they realized that if they set people free to pursue pleasure, that they'd be so busy doing that, they wouldn't have time to make trouble.
Also, they used thaumaturgy, which is nothing other than governing the fabrications of the people through language.
Great insight. If you really want to know more about this, look up thaumaturgy, Thaumaturgy.
And take a look at Gatto.
Yes, John Taylor Gatto. He's an educator, and he deconstructs the whole educational system and shows why it's made the way it is, simply to foster a particular set of identifications of self.
Maybe that's a good way for people to realize that the self is a fabrication when they see how indoctrinated they have become by schooling.
Well, yes, but then you have to take it further. You have to see that the perception of pleasurableness is the addictive substance that we're all hooked on. Okay? There's a Pali word for it is abhinandati. Abhinandati means delighting or enjoying. Taking something, making it ours, and then enjoying it. Well, what is that really? It's making up stories. We take this thing, which is not really ourself, but we identify with it and we make it ours. I gave the example in the video of a car. Let's say you see this very nice car on the street, and then pretty soon you start thinking, oh, that's a really nice car. Not just any car. That car could be mine. I could be the owner of that car. And then you start fantasizing, seeing yourself in the car, driving the car, coming out of the car.
You don't see yourself in the shop with the car.
No, you don't see yourself broken down by the side of the road with the car. You only see yourself enjoying the car, right? And then coming out of the car and being seen with the car, you
Admired.
know. Yes. And then enjoying in the back seat of the car or whatever. This is the dope. This is the stuff we're hooked on. And abhinandati, well, we could go deep into the Pali derivations and all of that. But what it really means is bhoga, delighting, enjoying, being the enjoyer. Yeah.
Trying desperately to be the enjoyer.
Yeah. Why? Just to take up the time and obscure the fact
that you're going to die.
That we're going to die. This is all impermanent. We're not really who we say we are.
It's all fake.
That's why the voice of conscience is so disturbing. That's why we see it as an accusation. That's why we feel the inevitable march of time as a threat.
Why we glorify youth.
All these things. Stars, you know, singers and people like this who are apparently enjoying like anything. We idolize them, we worship them like gods. You know, John Lennon, when he said, you know, we Beatles are more popular than Jesus Christ, you know, in one way he was joking. But in another way, he was making a commentary that, you know, well, we're just a bunch of rascals from Liverpool, and you guys are worshiping us better than your own conception of God. Well, what's up with that?
Yeah.
So, of course, it got them in big trouble because they were treading on another form of identification, which is religious identification, which is maybe one of the most dangerous forms of identification, along with nationalism, politics. But anyway, all these things are based on the principle of delighting. Take patriotism, for example. When I was a boy, every 4th of July, we'd have a big parade. And even though it was sweltering hot, everybody would dress up in their military uniforms. And I was always in the band, you know. So we would dress up in our band uniforms, which are designed for football games during the winter, right? So we'd be standing there like sweating. playing the Star Spangled Banner and all this. And everybody's getting all puffed up, you know. People were even crying. Huh? And what are they doing? They're feeling pleasure in the idea that I belong to this certain country. Huh. But their country is simply a line on the map.
Yeah.
If you go up in an airplane and you look down, you don't see all those lines on the ground.
No.
Well, maybe you do now that they built a fence, you know, in Mexico.
And the sum of the country, if you were able to gather it up, it wouldn't be as high standard, high moral, high ideas as they.
No, that's just all puffery. It's just promo. It's just disinformation to keep everybody happy while the real business goes on in the back room.
Yeah.
Come on, people. Everybody knows this now, or they should, huh? All the stuff that you get on the news every day about, you know, how wonderful it is to be blank, fill in the blank, American, French, German, EU, whatever. This is just propaganda. Because we are not. Just because we happen to be born in a certain geographical area. Huh? I mean, when you think of it, it's just ludicrous. It's ridiculous. But people take
everything
pleasure.
Everything we adopt depends on the context that we grow up in.
Everything. I'm an American. I'm a Canadian. I'm a Brit. I'm a this. I'm a that. I'm a Ford driver. I'm a cowboy. I'm a Californian. I'm a hippie. I'm a stockbroker. I'm
gamer.
A Lutheran. A what?
Gamer.
A gamer.
I'm a World of Warcraft player.
Oh,
I'm
boy.
a warlock.
Oh boy, yeah. Now come on, this is just a little figure on a computer screen. This has nothing to do whatsoever with you or who you are or what you really are.
Yeah.
And
deep down inside you hate it.
But yes, and it causes you suffering. What you have to do to maintain that identity as a warlock, you have to pay for the computer, you have to pay for the internet, you have to be online so many hours every week or every month. You have to pay for the game itself. You have to spend hours and hours maintaining and upgrading that character just to stay up with the state of the art. You have to buy these new weapons or whatever, or however you get the... I mean, it's just ridiculous.
And you spend all that time leveling up some character instead of improving yourself.
Yeah, like life isn't hard enough. You have to take on this artificial, useless struggle.
Bad enough that you fabricate your own self.
You see, folks, you see what's going on, people? You see? All of this nonsense is to hide the fact that we are not. I is not. Mine is not. Those are all fabrications. On the other hand, I mean, here we are trying to enjoy pleasure with all these things, and pleasure is actually what's driving them. That's why people spend hours on just stupid video games, because when they get those points, oh yeah, that's great, you know, let's go out and celebrate. But on the other hand, they have to also accept displeasure, fear, worry, anxiety, different kinds of mental pain, and so on. Because at every moment, with all these different forms of being that we have, there's also danger. Now, I may feel puffed up with patriotism on account of thinking myself an American. But then America has all these enemies. America has all these problems. America has all this crime and so many other things that are going on. So as soon as you adopt the persona, the identity, the identification of a person with their country, you also adopt all the negatives that come along with that, all the problems, all the threats. I mean, when I was growing up, the specter of atomic war with Russia was always in the news, right? Like any day. And as a matter of fact, 2 or 3 times we came within minutes of actually launching those missiles. Yeah. This has come out lately as things get declassified, 30 years after the fact. And the problems that were there, because there's these guys on the other side of the planet that are getting ready to nuke us, were
and they were financed by the American elites.
Well, they were financed by somebody, Everything is financed by somebody, but what is somebody's agenda? What are they trying to do? Well, they're trying to keep the people down they're trying to keep people down by keeping them in fear. And there are many, many different mechanisms and strategies they use, but all of them depend on the fact that people think they are I. And I can be threatened, I can be hurt, I can be killed. There is always danger. There's always this anxiety, this displeasurable mental feeling. Any kind of a danger to our being, up to and including the danger of death and dissolution of being, is perceived as displeasurable. You see? So even though what's driving our identification with these different forms of being is pleasure, the fact is, as soon as we accept these identifications, we are subject to so much displeasure, and especially the displeasure of death, which is the ultimate, the source of all the other anxieties.
Death in itself isn't so bad, but thinking about it
is really, really bad. So there's pleasure and displeasure. And the pleasure is in proportion to the degree of identification with what we're doing or what we think we are. And the displeasure is also in proportion to the amount of pleasure that we're getting from something.
When it changes, then we get that much displeasure.
Right. So we may think we're going along just fine. We've got our girlfriends or boyfriend, and we've got our place, we've got our car, and our job, and our career, and all of this. But what we don't realize is, at any moment, any of those things can go away. Or even if they don't go away real soon now, even if we go on and continue for years or decades,
you get to keep everything, you have to go away.
Someday they're going to go away.
They're going to go away, or you have to go away.
And you, both, are going to go. What you think of as you. Remember, I is always an identification with an object, whether it be a body, or a name, or consciousness, or a mind, or a thing, or something. There's some sense object involved. So all sense objects are impermanent, therefore all identities are impermanent, therefore we're all going to die. Finished. It's certain, 100% certain, that everything that we now consider I and mine is going to go away. Sooner or later. So all this pleasure that we're getting it's all on the plastic. We're going to get the bill. And when the bill comes, then all that pleasure that we've been experiencing from that thing will turn to displeasure. Displeasure as opposed to pain. Pain is a physical sensation. Displeasure is a mental sensation. Okay? So things can be pleasurable or displeasurable, regardless of whether they're physically pleasant or painful, according to their meaning. A person can get sick or even die from drinking too much water. A nice drink of water is very pleasant, but if you overdo it or in the wrong circumstances, it can actually kill you. So things are pleasant and unpleasant on the bodily level, but they're pleasurable or displeasurable on the mental level according to their significance. So this pleasure and displeasure is always in association with I and mine. Our sense of self and the things that we identify with. You see, this rap that we're going through now, we could elaborate this rap indefinitely. This is like a jazz tune. And once we learn the changes, it's like we could go on improvising on it indefinitely. And it would always be different, yet it would always be the same. The fact that the identification occurs in 6 stages, which we went over in the beginning of the podcasts, in the first, I think it was in the 4th and 5th episode, the beginning of chapter 4 of Weti Muni's book. And then, again, we went over it in the video, the realizing not self. You should learn these things, and you should sit down, and when you meditate, you do meditate, don't you? When you meditate, this is what you should be meditating on, okay? The pretty lights and all of that, that's nice. But once you get established in concentration,
you should practice insight.
You should look into yourself and see how you are sabotaging yourself by identifying with all these different things. And what do you get out of this?
Displeasurableness, I think every identification with any sense object, whether it's pleasurableness or displeasurableness is like a disturbance in the mind that you're aware of, that is a disturbance. But even happiness is like a subtle disturbance.
Oh, they're both equally disturbing.
Yeah.
And they both take the same amount of effort.
And the Nibbana is called supreme happiness because it's the absence of both gross disturbance and subtle disturbances. Like
it's the relief from both pleasure and displeasure. The Buddha calls it ease, being at ease, a feeling of relief from the effort of having to identify a self. It takes effort, just like maintaining that character in World of Warcraft takes effort. It takes effort for us to maintain this I and mine. We have to be currently reviewing all of our inventory of identifications and keeping them up to date. You know, it's like checking all those sites on the internet that you have to look at every day to keep up with what's going on. It's a job. It takes effort and time.
Grabbing and holding on to these sense objects, and they burn you.
Yeah.
They disturb the mind.
It's like holding on to a hot object or something. Doing chin-ups on a hot bar. You have to hold on to it, but oh man. The clinging is painful in and of itself.
Even if it's pleasurable feeling, the Buddha also says that all feelings are counts as displeasurable.
Why? Because you have to cling. And clinging itself is painful.
Yeah, it disturbs the mind. You're much happier when the mind is peaceful and calm and clear.
Yeah. And that's what you get, of course, from meditation. Meditation ultimately is cultivating tranquility. Okay, especially the jhanas.
If you practice insight, it will also lead to tranquility. When you see these processes, the mind will gradually slow down, and you will have this clear state of mind when you're walking around in the world also.
Well, I would give an example. It's like a person who has a physical disability, and they have to do a certain exercise to recover. But because of their disability, doing that exercise is very painful. So maybe the doctor prescribes a painkiller so that they can do the exercise that is going to ultimately cure them of the disease. So the painkiller is like the tranquility from meditation.
Concentration.
Yeah. That when the mind is concentrated, it naturally generates pleasure. Not pleasure in the sense of sense pleasure, but a different kind of pleasure that comes naturally from the concentrated mind. It's pleasure without any object. So when you concentrate the mind, and especially when you concentrate it sufficiently and steadily to get into what are called the jhanas, in meditation, you experience a feeling of calm, peace, lightness, and pleasure, mental pleasure. So this pleasurableness of meditation enables you to take a look at these other sources of pleasurableness, like identifications and so on, eye-making and mind-making.
Sense gratification, they all give lower amounts of pleasure than the states of concentration gives.
Yes. So you can begin to wean yourself off of these habits gradually. You don't have to take the cold plunge. It's not something you can do overnight, even if you wanted to.
No.
You have to see in yourself how this is going on. We can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but it's not going to rid you of the habit. It's just like we can talk forever about how smoking and drinking is bad. And everybody more or less knows this. But if you're smoking and drinking, if you have a habit, no amount of talking about it is going to solve that.
No.
You have to go through the process that it takes to quit.
In the here and now.
Yeah.
No New Year's Eve promises.
That never works anyway. No. So what we're talking about here is a process of insight, seeing into the con, the scam that you're running on yourself. And you will be so much better off without it. That is really hard to describe. I mean,
you'll get all those things that the ego wants
that's
without the ego.
That's the funny thing. You know, it's just like your experience with girls when you were young. As long as you wanted them, as long as you chased after them, you couldn't get them. Right? When you stopped caring about it, then you had as many as you wanted. Right? I had a similar experience. So it's like this world is so perverse in that as long as you're chasing after pleasure and happiness, they're very elusive. But as soon as you just sit down, don't care about anything, and start to concentrate, then they will come knocking at your door, to try to stop you from meditating. Here's money, here's happiness. Look at our situation. In the past year, since we started this insight meditation, we've just gone from one situation to another, and every one has been better and better and better. And somehow or other, money comes. Money just drops out of the sky on us. It's ridiculous. I'm telling you, because we're creating good karma. Because we're meditating, we're doing all these things in a way to benefit not only ourselves, but everyone. We're sharing this knowledge with the whole world. Anybody can come. We just started the Dhamma Leadership Program, the Dhamma Leadership Adventure Program. Anybody can come from any part of the world and study with us.
Provided they really want.
Yeah, there's a few qualifications. Like you have to be serious. We're not here for tourism.
Yeah, they got to be here to give up the fabricated self. That's what it's really all about.
Yeah.
And then everything else will come automatically from there.
Well, everything else does come automatically from there. That's the point.
Yeah.
That if you follow this path of the Buddha, you will not be a loser. You will not have to really give up anything. In fact, you'll gain all the things that you want now but can't get. And chiefly, there's some saying like the person with desires is poor, and the person who has no desire is rich, or something. Words to that effect. As soon as you give up desiring, you start to realize how much you've actually got and enjoy it more. Just ordinary experience, everyday life is so much more pleasant when there isn't all this stuff in the way, all this mental anxiety, all this effort of maintaining the I. So, okay, we can stop there. Again, we ran over time, but that's nothing new. Next time, we're going to begin a new section in the book, which is called Clinging and Desire. And we're going to talk about clinging and how to overcome it.
I'm going to grab onto stuff, and then it's going to burn us, and I'm going to learn.
Well, the thing is that people do grab onto things, and it does burn them, but they still don't learn.
Yeah, but if they have the ontological category of this stuff is burning, maybe they'll recognize it as burning next time.
We'll have to go through the subject in the way that we've been doing.
Of course.
Discussing it in great detail. And then all the advantages will come out. And also the process will come out of that. So, if you have any questions, feel free to email us or leave a comment on the blog post. If anybody is even listening to these darn things, I don't know. We do this anyway, just for our own edification and to make sure we understand the philosophy that we're studying.
Edification?
Edification. You mean we become like Ed, right?
Yeah.
Edification. The instruction or improvement of a person morally or intellectually.
I'll have 2 of those.
Yeah, it's relevant to my interest too. So we want to become edified. Who's Ed anyway? Anyhow, we'll see you guys next time, or you'll hear from us the next time. And keep tuned to the blog because we have lots of good stuff coming, and it's only going to get better and better. So until then.
Oh.